Still talking about the loss of Golden State, but that's okay. We're moving on to the discussion about Jayson Tatum and why he needs to play a certain way to be an MVP. And the solution to the Celtics against the Warriors, they need to see the time knife. I'm going to explain it all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Corrales above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and I cover the Boston Celtics every day for you here with a free, fresh podcast dropped directly to your device, whatever device you use, whatever app you want to use, even on YouTube. It's there for you Monday through Friday. Bonus podcasts on the weekend, like yesterday after the Warriors beat the Boston Celtics. So thank you for making this show your first listen every day. I'm John Corrales, former professional basketball player. Now I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. We're still not done with that Warriors game. I think there's still a lot of stuff to talk about. And I still think that there's this battle between what's the appropriate reaction here. So let's bring in Tom Westerholm to get the underscore reaction for this game. Tom, how you doing, bud?
I'm always known for having the correct reaction. I think that's my thing.
A thing. Yeah. It's what I've always known you to be. Appropriate.
Appropriately reactionary, I think.
Yes. That's exactly it. And so the Warriors beat the Celtics. And I think a lot of the reaction, I mentioned this on yesterday's podcast, but I think there is some element of we on the outside definitely took this as a mile marker in this season's. We saw that Warriors game and we all sat there and said, yeah, baby, look at this team. Look how good they are. It's going to feel so good to walk into the Chase Center and just smack those guys around. It was going to be like this catharsis that the Celtics were going to walk into San Francisco and be like, okay, boys, time to pay the piper. We're going to lay down the smackdown here, and we're going to just send you all a little bit of a message. And it didn't happen. Everybody's like, oh, my God, what? I don't think it's that bad. Tom, I might posit that maybe it's a good thing that the Celtics walked in there and kind of like had to slink out and say, okay, there is still – there's more that we can do. And also, most importantly, if you don't play the way that you normally play, if you try to just, it's like the 300, the movie, if you break that phalanx, you're in trouble. But as long as you stay within that and you just play your game, you'll be fine. I think that's where I land. They actually were in a position down 8 with 6 minutes to go, and a little bit of execution, a little bit of ball movement, a couple of shots to fall, they would have come out of there with a hard-fought win. So I'm nowhere near as discouraged, I think, as the general population might be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can take this. This is kind of one of those you know Rorschach test type games where you can see what you want to see in it. I think, and I think a lot of people want it. Like I have had this feeling, just from kind of seeing people's reaction, that there is still kind of this sense of like, I don't know what to make of this team so far this season, because obviously you can 21-6 is 21-6, and 21-5 before last night's game was 21-5. Like that. There's only so much you can say about that, positively or negatively, but almost this sense of like, is this team too good to be true? Right? Like, is this like, can we really trust this? Is this kind of the inverse of starting 23-24 last year, where last year's team was not actually that bad? Is this team this good? And I don't think that last night's game actually tells us that one way or the other. And I don't think the Celtics think that either. What I do think is that I think the Celtics probably wanted to win that game more than others, right? Like just human nature, right? You want to win that game. You might not fess up to it post game because, you don't want to admit that you wanted to win a game and then you didn't, that's just like not something that's super comfortable to talk about. But I do think that like the Celtics know very well that there is a lot of season left to go and then a lot of postseason to go. And after there's a lot that still needs to happen. And losing to the Warriors is not actually, sorry, my dog is making an appearance in the background. It's trying to distract me here. Losing to the Warriors is not going to like right now. It doesn't actually mean very much at all. It just means that there's still this kind of like, almost boogeyman hanging over the Celtics.
Mhm.
That's very natural. Like when you think about LeBron James and the Celtics, right? When
Right.
like 2008, 2010, he couldn't overcome them. They were this thing standing in his way. And he was the best player on earth and all this stuff. And he just could not beat these old fogies who just would not let him, get through to the next round.
Mhm.
Finally happens. And even after he breaks through, like if you think about him in kind of the Celtics parallel to the Heat, where the Heat play them really tough, even though the Celtics just feel like a much more talented team, that kind of breaking through that doesn't actually guarantee anything going forward, right? Like the Celtics, in 2012, they almost beat LeBron again. Like they were always that really tough test for him, even when he and his teams were clearly more talented. So I just think like when you really look at this team big picture and you just kind of remember like they broke through last year. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're not going to be intimidated by the Pelicans or one of these really good teams that hasn't played them in the playoffs. But also it's kind of why like there's a lot of respect for the Warriors. There's a lot of respect for the Heat. And I think part of that is just like it's almost like I don't want to call it a big brother thing, but like like a team that you've had to go through, that you've had real battles with, and that you had to overcome. I think you're always going to have that little bit of like, oh man, these guys are tough. And that other team is always going to have that little bit of like, oh, we can play these guys tough. So I don't know. That was a long-winded way of me saying, I also am not worried about that at all. I think that, look, the Celtics have a lot more work to do and they know that. And, last night's game was just like, yeah, they keep working. Like
Keep working.
It continues.
Okay, so you mentioned that this was kind of like a Rorschach test.
I believe Rorsach, right?
Rorschach test.
Yes.
All right, so then let's do one here. What do you see? Sorry, this is gonna have to be a YouTube exclusive.
Okay.
I'm showing Tom Rorschach test slides. Tom, what do you see here?
Initial look is nothing. I just see
that is Jayson Tatum forcing it when he should have kicked the ball out to a wing player.
Dang, when you tell me your perspective, I see it so clearly. But before that, I just couldn't see it.
Yeah, I know. It's not an entire commentary on your intellect, but it is somewhat. All right, what do you see on this one, Tom?
Boy, I don't know if this makes me a psychopath or something that I just don't see anything in Rorschach tests. Is that
really?
Is that possible?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I see the Celtics making poor rim reads.
Okay, because I was gonna say like a raccoon pelt.
Yeah, it could be a raccoon pelt with like a sword going through it, but I also see the Celtics getting to the rim and making poor decisions.
Yeah.
On this one. Okay, let's just do one more here. And Tom, what do you see?
Okay, so I finally see one. I see the Celtics inexplicably going ISO after just playing so much mismatch ball when moving it has really been beneficial for them this season.
That's just an ink blot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm telling you, I'm a psychopath.
All right, we'll talk about the Celtics. I think I want to get into the Jayson Tatum stuff because really, you go back and you look at what Jayson Tatum did. I think I posed the question of playing too hard yesterday. And I think that's something that trying too hard. And I think that's something that maybe we have to consider. Hey, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Do you have a ton of subscriptions that just kind of floating out there. I know that you have just your Hulu, your Disney Plus, your HBO Max. There's just one after another after another. I wanted to watch Ink Master, so guess what? I gotta subscribe to Paramount Plus, and I just don't unsubscribe to things after I'm done with them. That's why Rocket Money can help out with that significantly. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, has all your apps and your subscriptions in one place, cancels the ones that you don't want to. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't even know you were paying for. You may even find out that you're double charged for a subscription. So to cancel, all you have to do is press cancel. Very simple. I wish everything had a simple button. Oh, cancel, bye, done, goodbye. Rocket Money takes care of everything else. So cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. The unnecessary, useless subscriptions gone. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. All the big stories from across the sports world in 22 minutes. And all the Locked On local experts' perspective. Unlike anywhere else, find it where you found this podcast. Tom, the other big story here is really the biggest one, I think, is Jayson Tatum. And a lot of people were saying, oh, he didn't show up for this game. Which I really feel like if that's your default, then you got to watch more closely.
Yeah.
Because it's not that he didn't show up or he didn't try. I think just like last season, he tried to do too much by himself. There was I highlighted this one play on Boston Sports Journal where he drove and had Sam Hauser wide open on the right side in the corner, and he chose not to kick it. And he drove and got too deep and tried to flick this little crazy layup in, and it didn't work. Then, I don't know if it was a play later, where he had Malcolm Brogdon in the corner. And it's such a great example of before he got too deep, he kicked it over to Brogdon. Brogdon attacked. Tatum relocated into the corner. He got the ball back, attacked, got past the defender, and got a layup. And it's like, oh, when you make the right pass and do the right thing, it's like, hey, Jayson, somebody should have been like on the bench with the big, like with the screen, like, do this more. Do this more. Don't do the other stuff more. And I think where I land with Jayson Tatum is that while he is a legitimate MVP candidate, he still is not Giannis type. I do what I want, when I want, where I want type of guy. He's still not Luka in the sense that I know I'm going to this spot and I'm going to get there. He doesn't do that all the time. He can, but that's not his default. His default is to do this other stuff. And when he does that other stuff, he does not look like an MVP candidate at all. And we start to get the questions of, hey, why isn't Jaylen Brown being discussed? Because Jaylen Brown now has had 3 straight 30-plus point games, and his numbers are starting to look really, really close to Jayson Tatum's numbers. And there's a real kind of discussion to be had. It's like, oh, hey, look, man, Jaylen's been carrying this team over the past few games. Jayson just like the rest of the team, play the right way, understand how it is that you, in the early part of the season, got to the front of the rim and were attacking, and stop getting back to the old Tatum where you find yourself in trouble and all you can do is try to use your go-go gadget arms where, it looks like he has 2 elbows and try to like flick it up. Like that's not going to work.
Yeah. And I mean, like the go-go gadget arms, there was that one play. I think it was an offensive rebound where he just like tried to reach around everybody and like lay it in and just like, nah, dude, like just run something, man. Like you guys get something whenever you try to run something. No, and I think to your point about, the MVP thing, like he can get there and like and we know that because we've seen him be there like a pretty fair amount. In fact, this is why he's been an MVP candidate this season more than ever this year. Like this has been his best. He does it pretty frequently.
100%.
And so, that, and I think that's one of the reasons why it is, kind of frustrating for, fans or anybody watching, or I mean, anybody really. Again, watching him against the Warriors, watching him against, that, especially that second game against the Heat, where you just kind of are like, this isn't it, man. Like, this is just not, like, that you've been doing it so well all season. Then this just isn't it. So, um, but I think, look, like like Jaylen has been really good these last few games, and we've kind of seen where this team, especially against the Warriors, it's like if Jaylen's really good and Tatum isn't good, um, there's kind of a ceiling on where they go,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons, again, why Tatum at his peak is an MVP candidate, because he does carry this team to that level. He does kind of turn them into this contender that they're trying to be. So, yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, last night was like kind of a discouraging game for him in that way, and really his potential is why I kind of made that LeBron comparison early in the episode, because like as much as Jaylen is included in all of this, and the Celtics as a whole have been, trying to come up together, Tatum is the guy. And like Tatum is the guy who has to overcome some of these things. Tatum is the guy who has to overcome the Warriors. Tatum is the guy who has to, who's trying to kind of get to this point where we just haven't quite seen it yet. But we keep seeing him get close. And I think that's again, that's one of the things that makes games last night a little discouraging for anybody who does think that he is, the MVP or should be the MVP this year.
Yeah, I think I like the point about like who at their best, what are they? And I think I don't want to turn this into a Jaylen versus Jayson, because you need both of these guys to be who they are.
Yes, totally.
Like Jayson at his best, I think, is like the mover of mountains, right? He at his best, if he does the things that he's supposed to do, he disrupts everything. He makes everybody better. What Jaylen at his best does, he makes the team better in that he's able to carry them, for stretches. He's able to carry them scoring wise. But I just don't think that like you said, at their best, 100% most effective, Jaylen can drop 50. No doubt about it. Jaylen can drop 50. But Tatum can drop 50 and rebound and block shots and distribute at all that other stuff at just a higher level. So I do get the question of why doesn't Jaylen enter into more of the MVP conversation? It's because it's not that Jaylen, I've said this before in the podcast, people turn this into Jaylen disrespect. It's not disrespect to say that Jayson Tatum is the better overall player, in my opinion. Jaylen Brown, if he gets MVP votes, will certainly, like, if you go 1 through 5 and you say you put Jaylen Brown at like 4 or 5, there are going to be a few people who do that. That I think is going to be fine. There are going to be people who, like, I think he's an all NBA player, which means I think he's one of the top 15 players in the league right now. That's not disrespectful to say he's one of the top 15 players in the league. I just think that, like you said, at their best, Jayson is better. And if Jayson plays to that MVP level, then the Celtics are unstoppable, because now you can't, there's no way you can stop both of them. And if he's playing that way, then Jaylen just gets to live, pretty comfortably in that. But my point, as I started this segment, my point is that Tatum isn't naturally the same kind of MVP candidate that Giannis and Luka and some of these other guys are. Tatum isn't necessarily a force of nature that just walks onto the court and says, okay, there's nothing you can do about this guy. There is something you can do about this guy if he's not playing a certain way. And I think that's what we saw in Golden State. If he's playing a certain way, then there's nothing you can do about this guy.
Right.
Because if he's making the right decisions at the right times, it's just that he has to work a little bit harder and make the decision to be that versus some of the other guys who are just naturally that. Doesn't make it's different. And when he doesn't play like that, when he chooses to say, I'm only doing it this way, or I'm trying to do this too much, then he becomes at risk of just not being as effective. I'll let you respond to that. I know you got that. I know you got it. I know you. I know you want to.
I'm gonna forget it on purpose.
Okay, well, that would fit the game that we're talking about. Tom _ never mind. First, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. As I've said before, I grew up in a small business. I know how hard it is to hire and how important it is to have the right number of people that you can choose from. I've also had to hire people before. So getting that squad, that thing, that it's like putting a team together. You have 15 slots. You're not going to bring in 15 people. You want 30 people so you can cut them down, or 20 people so you can cut it down. That's what LinkedIn Jobs does for you. You, in a few clicks, create your job posting, and then you add your purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. That spreads the word that you're hiring. Very, very simple to do. It's fast, it's free, and with simple tools like screening questions, it makes it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience. Now you're starting to make your cuts. You quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. This is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Tom. Now's your opportunity. I cut you off before because I tell people about LinkedIn. Have you forgotten on purpose?
I have. I have nothing left to say on this podcast.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just get rid of you. Bye. No, all right, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
I
hold absolute power.
Yeah, this is a very authoritarian. Locked On Celtics is very pro-authoritarian. I've often said.
I mean, I never said otherwise. I don't know why people assumed anything different.
Right. No, so I think to your point about the other MVP candidates, right? Like it's, I mean, part of it is where their games kind of originated. Like if you look at Luka, there was always kind of this element of like being a point guard or being a lead ball handler. That was always a big part of who he was. And you look at Giannis, I mean, being gigantic and super physical. I mean, obviously he was never quite this, but just being like overwhelming physically, that was always something that he did and something that, like part of who he was. If you look at Tatum and the way he came up, I mean, so much of what he did was predicated on footwork and on like, mid-range, jumpers and all this stuff that like is a little bit more, is a little bit more finesse and is a little bit, it just frankly is a little harder to be efficient. And now what we're seeing is him, kind of put all these different elements into his game, right? Where he can drive and dish. Now he can, run all these pick and rolls. Now he can, just kind of be the linchpin of an offense. And not in the same way that his hero was, like not in the same way that Kobe was, where everything revolved around Kobe and maybe you got some scraps here and there. That's not who Tatum is. That's not how modern basketball is played, really. Mm-hmm. So, we're seeing Tatum evolve into all of this stuff. And one of the most impressive things about him, frankly, is that some of it isn't as natural as it was for Luka, as it might be for Giannis. He's having to learn all of this. And he is. And like, I think, by the end of this year, maybe like next year, whatever it is, we're going to start to see him perfect a lot of it. Like just who he is. It's how he is as a player. Like he's that good. But it does come with growing pains, and, growing pains don't stop just because you learned one thing. Like you're still going to make mistakes. You're still perfecting stuff. So as he does it, I think, we'll keep seeing these improvements, and they'll be interesting to watch. But it does make nights like last night, 2 nights ago when you guys are listening to this, it does make nights like Golden State really interesting because it's a reminder that he's an MVP candidate. He's averaging 30 a game, and he's just he hasn't reached his full peak quite yet.
Which is why I think the people who are like, "Oh, he didn't show up." One of my the funniest ones is he doesn't show up in big games, which is absolutely one of the most asinine things. As if the last year's playoffs didn't happen and he didn't save the Celtics in Game 6 against Milwaukee.
Like, he scored 60 in a play-in game. What are we doing here? Or 50. He scored 50 in a play-in game. What are we doing here?
Yeah. No. It's just, look, Tom. There are narratives here. People got to get their cakes off, man. Facts don't matter when the takes are getting off, baby.
It is a takes-based economy.
So I do think it is actually impressive that Tatum is building himself into this. It really is like if you were like a NASCAR race or some kind of car race, and these cars come off the production line as like Luka and Giannis, they come off the production line as these race cars. And Tatum is this car that like is being built from, great parts, but you're still taking what was like a really good car and you're turning it into a race level. You're adding things to the car to make it that car that can win a race against these other guys who just have these natural types of gifts and these natural types of abilities and mentalities. It really is impressive to see where he's been and where he came from. And a lot of people always knew that he had the potential. That's why Danny Ainge was going to make him a number 1 pick. It's not like we're talking about a second round pick. He's always had this potential. It just wasn't there at the beginning. And it had to develop into this. And now we're finally there. It's a different path to what I think we all think is the same place. That Tatum versus Luka versus Giannis, they're not the same. They're not the same type of superstar, but they're at that same level now. And it just takes a little bit more focus from Tatum to play at that level. And that's kind of my point. Tatum has to make decisions to play at that level, whereas Giannis and Luka are just naturally at that level. And it's just a little bit different.
Which, to your point, it is not to say that Tatum is unfocused coming into these games. Like that's like,
no, right.
It's just that it requires more. So, I agree with all that. I think, and to extend your analogy, it's like Tatum was like a luxury car, right? Like, he had all this really good stuff that Giannis and Luka might not have, right? Like sure, Tatum, Tatum has stuff that those guys don't. He is more polished than Giannis. He is more, he is like taller and more physically imposing and a much better defender than Luka. Like he's got these other things that those guys don't have. So, it's, I don't know. It's one of the things that makes this new era of superstars so interesting is like, there isn't a LeBron. There isn't this one guy where it's like, wow, this guy's just generational and everybody's going to be chasing him over the next, 10 years or whatever. It's a lot of really interesting guys who all come from very different, very unique places, sometimes like literally in the world. Right.
Yeah. No, right.
And it's part of what's going to make, I think, the story of the next 5 to 10 years of NBA basketball really fun.
Yeah. And so, I think we've hit on the 2 major storylines out of the Warriors game that I'm kind of glad actually that game happened on Saturday night. Cause the one thing I didn't want to happen after that was all the debate shows having like too many of these conversations that were not substantive, like, does he show up in the big game? Oh, and people taking sides like that crap. But yeah, I think, look, the Warriors game, it could boil down to simply, I really do think, and I mentioned this yesterday, Jaylen was very candid in his post-game comments where he's like, we played like we circled this on the calendar a long time ago. And I think he's actually telling the truth there. They came in and played like a team that wanted it so bad, but didn't have they still don't have that, I don't know if confidence is the right word. That's probably not the right word, but that thing that makes you walk in and be like, yeah, we're a different team now, and we're just here to kick your ass. And versus,
I think it is the right word. I think
right
it is
after,
a confidence thing. Yeah.
it actually reminds me of like, I know you watched Good Place, and like
yes.
Cheaty at the end where he's like going after the consoles, like, you know what? No, I'm confident now, and he kind of goes at them. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa! But
I've seen 800 timelines all in an hour. I'm ready to go.
He has seen the time knife.
He saw the time knife.
Yeah. But that is kind of like the Celtics need to see the time knife. And I don't know if last night was the part of seeing that, but that's the difference. Going in there with the absolute ability to smack the Warriors, which the Celtics absolutely did before the game and continue to have the ability and the players and the capability to beat the Warriors by 30 at home. They absolutely have that ability. They didn't, because they walked in there and were like, just instead of like a boxer going in there and like, yeah, they just started to like middle schoolers in a fight in the recess. Like they just lost their composure for a bit, and they could just never quite get it back. So yeah, they need to see the time knife. They need to walk in there and be like, you know what? Actually, you know what, Golden State? We don't care about you. It's now I'll go a different show. The Don Draper meme, where it's like, I feel sorry for you. It's like, really? I don't think about you at all. Right. Like that's where the Celtics need to be. You know what? We're not circling this on our calendar because you are no longer significant to us. You are just another team, Golden State. And we're going to come in here and smack you around like we smacked around the last team. Who are they? Oh yeah, the Phoenix Suns. Like that's where they need to get to.
Right. I do have one before we go. I have one quick question, like one lightning round question.
Sure.
You remember like 2 years ago when the Celtics, or maybe even a little bit more at this point,
when the Celtics 2 weeks ago. So no. Anyway,
this is gonna be a challenge. when the Celtics used to just throw Jaylen Brown at Steph Curry and just be like, go beat him up for 40 minutes. Just why don't they do that anymore? I'm like, I don't understand.
You know what?
I like all this drop coverage and stuff on Steph, or like these like going under screens and stuff where it's like, well, he's gonna get the threes then. I don't understand why they don't just do the Jaylen thing again. Try it. I don't know.
I honestly, I think they have Marcus Smart, and he's supposed to be that guy.
Sure.
And I think the under the screen stuff was a lot of good angles from Looney. And I think when you know that they're dropping and you can set the screen at the right angle, you kind of don't have a choice but to drop. And you think like there was one particular play that told me everything, where Marcus kind of put his back to Looney and spun off of him.
He did that spin thing, yeah.
Did the spin thing. And that to him, to Smart, like it's great. Like you can quickly get around because you see the guy, and instead of like stepping back and sliding, you're like into his body and you just boom. But Steph only needs that boom to get his shot off.
Right.
So that works against all but maybe I could probably pick like 3 or 4 players. 2 of them happen to be on the Warriors. I think the Warriors set good angles. I think the Celtics had no choice but to play Blake Griffin early. They probably shouldn't have. Maybe they could have tried Vonleh. Even though Vonleh has kind of fallen out of favor, like that might have been a situation like, let's just try Vonleh up to touch on the screen and see if he can't at least bother Steph with his size.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, like that I do put a lot of that on Missoula. I think this was a Missoula. There are a lot of reasons why they lost. I think Missoula, this might be the most Missoula, the highest percentage of Missoula in a loss so far this season, because I think that he got away from, I don't know if Vonleh would have helped. And I'm sitting here hearing myself advocate for Vonleh as an answer to beating the Golden State Warriors. Like,
to Steph Curry?
Really? Oh, John, what's your answer to beating Steph Curry? Well, elementary, more Noah Vonleh. Like, no, that's
2 things: the time knife and Noah Vonleh.
That's right. That's really, when you come out of this, that's going to be the headline on the thing. More time. need the time knife, not Time Lord.
Not Time Lord, guys.
We need the time knife
Right.
and more Noah Vonleh. But they do have some tools on the bench, like Kornet. Not a great Kornet game, not a great Blake Griffin game. So look down the bench and go, let's see if we can get Vonleh up to the level of the screen and see if that can't help. And then you chase over the top of that and see if you can help behind it, and or maybe Vonleh can get back. Maybe you're just creating a different problem, but you're eliminating that one, and then hopefully you can adjust behind that and it'll be okay. But I do think that the going under was great pick setting, as I said yesterday. Maybe some illegal pick setting, but whatever. But the drop coverage, that was a problem. And it just and Blake Griffin played well. He played well in what he was trying to do. It's just that defensively, with him having to be so deep in the drop, that was not that didn't help anything at all.
Yeah.
Not very lightning round.
Now you still didn't answer my question about why not have just Jaylen Brown chase him around all game.
Oh, yeah, no, you could. No, you could do that.
Yeah.
But I think really just my answer is that Marcus Smart can do that.
Right.
And Marcus Smart should be able to do that. And if Marcus Smart can't, then you try Brogdon, then you try Derek White, then you go a different way, because you still have wings out there. And look, Jaylen should have a crack at it too, but I don't know that. I think the team is just made up differently. So you can have your guards go out there. Marcus Smart should be enough. He should be enough. It's just that schematically with the drop coverage and the angles of the picks, that Smart was kind of eliminated from that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
I'm eliminating you from the podcast because it's over now.
Thanks,
Tom.
All right. Appreciate you.
All right. Appreciate you as always. Fun podcast as always, even though we're talking about, a loss. But hey, look, it's one loss. It really is one loss. It feels like more, and there's a little bit more behind it. It's the Warriors, but it's just one loss, and the Celtics are still the best team in the NBA. So it's fine. It's cool, my babies. I'm going to wrap it up there and say thank you to everybody who listens, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe now. If you're still listening to me after all of that, if you're still here, then I know you want to subscribe. You're not still here unless maybe you and your friends are mocking us at this point. But hey, I'll take mocking views and listens as well. But I would love it if you subscribe, watch the show on YouTube, ring the bell, make a comment, feed the algorithm, and your regular subscribers, please share the podcast to your friends and family and everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.